Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm kicking off a vlog. That's right, it's time for my We Love Jenny vlog, which I'm really excited for because We Love Jenny looks a little bit different this year. In previous years, we've had group reads or just certain focuses or things like that, but this year instead, we are doing a 24-hour readathon, which is something that Jenny loved to do all the time. And so I haven't done a 24-hour reading vlog in a long time. I've done several before. I've tried to do 24 hours in 48 hours or read 24 hours in 72 hours, which is a lot easier than trying to actually literally read as much as possible within a 24-hour time period. But this time I'm going to try to read 24 hours within the course of a week. Will I do that? I don't know. We're gonna try. We're gonna see how long it goes. But I have a couple of books that I'm reading in honor of Jenny that are going to count towards this timer. One of them is Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. This is kind of like a dark Sleeping Beauty retelling, I think. And I love T. Kingfisher because she writes with more of like a horror twist, but it's a much lighter horror that I can handle. And I love her writing style. It's really beautiful, but this was one that Jen rated highly and I haven't read yet. That's one that I'm going to be reading on my Kindle. For an audiobook, I'm going to be listening to Emily Wilde, the third book, just the compendium of something. I don't remember. I don't know why I don't remember, but I don't. It'll be on the screen, so that's fine. So I'm going to be listening to that one, and this is the final book in the Emily Wilde trilogy, which Jenny actually began the first book and really enjoyed the first book, but unfortunately she was not around to enjoy books 2 and 3. So I'll be finishing this trilogy in honor of her. I think she would have loved the trajectory that the series has taken, especially with the dark fae elements. I've really enjoyed books 1 and 2, especially book 1, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how the trilogy wraps up. So those are my plans for this week. I also have some other books that I'm like slowly reading throughout the month, but I don't anticipate actually finishing any of those or even close to that by the time this vlog is over. So I'm not really going to be giving you updates on those, but I am going to be still counting the time that I spend reading those books as time towards my 24-hour count. But I will be updating you on my thoughts on Thornhedge and Emily Wilde. So I hope you'll enjoy this little ride with me, and we'll see how long it takes me to actually read 24 hours. Hello my friends, it's Wednesday and I thought it would be a good time to update you. I'm a little over 4 hours in my reading timer so far. So I feel like there's a really good chance I might not make 24 hours this week. However, it has been a busier week. I was gone all day yesterday and then got together with a friend in the evening. And so I didn't have all that much time to read. Today I've had some time to read. I've been doing some cleaning, so I've been listening to the audiobook of Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and I am now 15% of the way through that audiobook. I'm enjoying it, but I don't feel overly invested. It's just kind of fluffy and fun. I do always love Emily and Wendell together. Their banter is a lot of fun, and I just truly enjoy the two of them interacting and Emily getting excited about learning things about the fairy world and all those kinds of things, as well as exploring actually physically in the fairy world is just really fun. I don't know if I can say a whole lot more than that because I think that it would probably spoil the first 2 books for you. But she has explored various aspects and areas of fairy world in all 3 of the books. So for me to tell you that element, I don't think is spoilery, but I'm enjoying it. It's just a lot of fun. It doesn't feel like it's anything too deep, but it is fun. I have now read 2 chapters in Thornhedge, and that already puts me at 21% of the way through the ebook. So that's going really quickly. It's actually shorter than I thought it was. I knew it was a shorter story, but I thought it was around like 180, 200 pages, and it's like 110 pages or something like that. So it's much shorter than I anticipated. However, I love it so far. I definitely wanted to come on here and update you before I read more of it, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't like spoiling anything. And I know that anything I say now would not be considered spoilery and would essentially be, you know, in the description of the book. As I assumed, it is kind of a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but we are from the point of view of this fairy whose name we don't know for the first like chapter and a half, but then we find out her name is actually Toadling. So she can actually transform into a toad or be in a human form. So it's interesting because she talks about how she has to stay where she is, kind of guard this keep. And we don't know why, but she always wants humans to go away. And so it used to be that people would come and investigate because there is literally like a hedge and like a wall of thorns with like the vines being as thick around as a man's leg and like really, really long thorns. And so people used to whisper about it and wonder what was going on with that. But as time went on, briars and other things have grown up and like surrounded that area. So it's not as noticeable anymore. And as time has come and gone, there have been times where it's been completely silent and she wouldn't see people for a really long time. She would actually lose track of the time as a toad, especially because she would hibernate and winters would go by and she would just lose count of how long time had been. There was one point where there were roads and things being developed through where she was, and she really wanted the people to leave. She was super nervous about it for years because everyone was really, really close to her hiding place. And we don't really know why all of this is going on, why she is like so nervous about humans, why she's trying to stay hidden from them, why she is where she is, until chapter 2, where there is a man who comes and is literally searching for and looking for this hedge of thorns. She finds from him that it has been hundreds and hundreds of years as time has passed, and the reason why there were all these humans for a while and then they stopped being there is that the plague hit, and so it wiped out so much of the population. And it's really interesting because there are real historical figures that are mentioned when he's talking about the plague, and real like statistics of how many people died and, you know, all of those kinds of things. All of that is really actually accurate. And so it's interesting that there is like this real world historical element to this fairy tale. He's part of a family where he is not the oldest son, but his family has some expectations for him and he doesn't want to do what they want to do. He ends up reading this story, a book in a monastery about a girl who has been put to sleep and cursed and put behind this hedge of thorns in a keep. And so he goes looking for it and finds it. And that is when we find out that Toadling actually has cursed this girl to sleep. She goes to check on her and wondering, is she really asleep? Because when she first cursed her, she would go to see if she was asleep daily. But then as she gained more kind of confidence that the curse was sticking, she would come back, you know, weekly and then monthly and then annually. And then at this point, it's been who even knows how many hundreds of years since she has checked on the person that she has put to sleep. It says, and there she was, curled up on the bed, her golden hair fanned out around her. Her chest rose and fell, and she had a slight smile on her lips. Toadling stood over the maiden that she had enchanted and let out a long, long sigh. So that's the end of chapter 2 and where I have left off. And so you're kind of wondering with Toadling, because she's ugly and she's not the normal fairy, there's lots of things that she can't do, there's lots of magic she can't do, and her magic will dissipate if she leaves where she is, not to mention the fact that the curse will be gone, like the magic will run out for that if she leaves this area. But she's not attractive, unlike a lot of fairies, and she doesn't feel particularly useful for the most part. And so you kind of wonder, with Toadling doing what she's doing, who the villain here is. If she's the one that has put this girl to sleep, like why was she put to sleep? Was it because, like Sleeping Beauty, where there was an evil fairy who was jealous and cast a spell? Because you don't get any sort of feeling of jealousy or anything awry within Toadling other than the fact that she's just fairly anxious. And that's really the only thing that you kind of sense about her. But overall, she doesn't seem malevolent. She doesn't seem like she has a bad feeling towards the girl. So I get the feeling that she's either maintaining a curse that she was ordered to do from someone else who does have malevolent desires towards this girl, or that this girl's actually evil and is not good, and there's a reason why she was put to sleep. It was for the protection of the fairies or the protection of other people or something like that. So I'm very curious to find out what the story is behind this girl. Either way, I'm really enjoying it. It definitely doesn't have the creepy undertone that every other Tea Kingfisher I've read so far does. I'm expecting that to come in a little later. I think that that's what happened with Nettle and Bone, well, maybe that felt kind of creepy in the beginning. But I know, because it's Tea Kingfisher, there will be some like spooky horror type elements here. So we'll see kind of where the story goes. But I am having so much fun with it so far. It's just really delightful to read. That's my update on what I've been reading, and I will update you soon. Hopefully I can get a little bit more read this afternoon. I have been hurriedly working today to try to get some things done. It's really gloomy and rainy, and all I want to do is read, but I have a to-do list a mile long, so I'm trying to get that ready because I have a class I'm teaching tomorrow at my homeschool group. I teach an American literature class to the high schoolers, so I had to prepare classroom activities, lecture notes, all of that kind of stuff. I have a video going up tomorrow that I edited and uploaded, so I just have to schedule that. So I'm coming to the end of my to-do list, which hopefully means that I can get some more read. But I will update you soon and let you know my reading progress. Hello everyone, it is now Saturday morning and I'm sitting at about 12 and a half hours of a 24-hour readathon. So I greatly overestimated my ability to read 24 hours in 1 week. But like I said, there was a time when I did a 24-hour readathon and I did read about 24 hours in a week, but that has not happened this week. I still have 2 days because I started reading on Monday morning, so I still have time and the day is young. However, I did finish Thornhedge and I wanted to come on and share my thoughts about that. I really enjoyed this. I thought that this was such a great novella. I think my one complaint is I wish it had been a little bit longer so we could have had a little bit more development of some of the ideas and things that are talked about here, but I just thought that it was so well done. It was just like perfect fairy tale vibes with a little bit of darkness and a little bit of creepiness. I did find out, and this is not spoilery to tell you this, I did find out that Toadling is in fact not a fairy, but she is actually a changeling, which means that the fairy folk took her at birth and substituted her with one of their own. And so she was raised by fairies that I think they're called greenlings, and they're kind of these ugly types of fairies that only have like water magic, and they kind of live in like stagnant waters like ponds and lakes and things like that, and kind of murky waters, which is why Toadling learns to transform into a toad, because it's just kind of a natural form when you're living in those kinds of areas. It was really fun to see Toadling tell her story to this man who has come, who is, as she calls him, a Saracen. So he's like a Muslim knight, but apparently that's not the term you use anymore in the days that he comes. But he's so different from other humans that she has encountered in the past. And so it was really sweet to like watch her open up to him as he's coming to what he assumes is a tower to rescue a fair maiden, and he can't figure out, like, is Toadling actually the maiden he's supposed to rescue, or is there a maiden in there? So it was fun to watch the unfolding of that story, because we're watching the two of them kind of adventure into this place as Toadling allows him, access to the keep, as well as access to herself and to her story and what happened. And so you're kind of getting those two things interspersed, which I really liked a lot. I thought that that was a really well done way to do this, to unfold the story of why Toadling is there, what the purpose of the magic is surrounding this keep, why she's afraid of humans coming in. All of those things like are intertwined within this story, while also having her, you know, in current day telling the story. And so I thought that that was a really interesting way to have the story unfold a little bit more slowly, rather than giving all of the backstory and why Toadling's there and all of the things. Because like I said, it wasn't at the end of chapter 2, I did not know that Toadling was actually a changeling. You find that out in chapter 3 very shortly after my last update. So I thought that the way that that kind of unfolded slowly made for a bit more suspense in such a short little novella. I think one of my favorite aspects of this story is the effect that love can have on a child, and the way that Toadling talks about that, because she was raised by these fairies that no one liked and everyone thought was worthless, but she was raised with such love by them that she was so sad to leave them, and she was so sad what happened with that whole aspect of the story, because they were home and they were family, even though she didn't know that they had essentially adopted her, that she wasn't one of them. She had no idea, because they always made her feel like she belonged, like she was supposed to be there. And it's just, I felt like that was such a precious element of the story, as to how love changes people and love gives people a place to belong, and your family is who loves you, maybe not your biological family. And Toadling has this recognition that of love's ability to change people. And there's a moment where she is so confused as to why someone else doesn't change with the love that they've received. And she says to the knight, "The queen loved her, and the nurse and I tried for years, and love wasn't enough, and trying wasn't enough, and nothing we did changed anything. It should have mattered. All that love and all that trying should have changed something." And so I just love the realization of how much love matters, and love has the power to change people, but then sometimes there are times where that doesn't work, because people do have their own free will and how they choose to receive love or not receive love, and all those kinds of things. So I just thought that this was a really lovely little fairy tale. It feels a lot more lighthearted than any other T. Kingfisher that I've read so far. So if you have been interested in T. Kingfisher, but you're like, not really a horror girly, this doesn't have a lot of horror elements to it. It has a few kind of slightly disturbing scenes that happen with some of the fairy magic and stuff like that, but overall I found it to be really lighthearted and really sweet, which really fits the fairy tale vibe. I am now 70% of the way through Emily Wilde. I'm really enjoying watching Emily kind of come into her own in fairyland, and kind of, I don't know, you've watched her grow and change in the way that she reacts to things, in the way that she reacts to people around her throughout the course of this trilogy. And so it's really, I've really enjoyed that. I also really enjoy the connection between these fairy stories that Emily encounters and how they apply to her actual life and real problems she's trying to deal with. And so that's something that I just love, that has played a role in every single Emily Wilde book, that there is a story. And that's kind of the crux of the title here, the Compendium of Lost Tales, that she wants to compile these stories. And as she's doing it, these lesser known stories, she's finding direct correlation between these stories and the issue that she's trying to resolve, in this case a curse that she is trying to break. And she's finding, oh, this is like a direct correlation to this story, and it has all these different outcomes and different versions of the story, and trying to figure out how that correlates to her actual situation in the book. And I just think that that's a really fun element that's been present in all three of the stories, but definitely has been really interesting here, particularly with some history that she finds out about her family, about her grandfather, and some of the interconnections there have been really interesting as well. Anyway, I'm gonna go do some cleaning, which means that I'm gonna be listening to more of Emily Wilde. I now no longer have a Kindle book that I can read because I finished Thornhedge, and so like these are my two We Love Jenny picks. So I have a feeling I'm gonna finish Emily Wilde before I've hit the 24-hour mark, so that's okay. Maybe I can find something else, but I did get Emily Wilde on my Kindle as well, so that way I have something to read at bedtime now, because Thornhedge was my bedtime read this week. So anyways, I'll come back and let you know my final thoughts on Emily Wilde once I finish that. Hello friends, you get a car update for your final update. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. Anyways, now's the time I have to wrap this up, so now's the time I'm going to. I did finish Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales and really enjoyed it. There was a lot of things that were really fun about it. I loved like the relationship dynamic, the magic dynamics. It was just a lot of fun. There were things about the ending that I felt almost like too abrupt or too easy once you got towards the end of certain things that have to happen, especially in terms of Emily has to rescue someone towards the end of the book. I won't say who or the situation surrounding that or where or anything like that, but I felt like it just seemed easier than I anticipated given that it is the end of a trilogy. I do think the author could easily continue this into more though. And maybe that's why she kind of left it the way that she did, because there is definitely opportunity to do more with the series and continue on in this world and with these characters, which is really fun and I think would be really great if she ended up doing that. I think one of my favorite aspects of this book was Shadow. I love Shadow. He's the goodest boy, and I love Augur, who is like a magical cat. So you've got like these magical creatures that perfectly embody cats and dogs in their relations to others, but also in their relation to humans, and I loved both of them, but especially Shadow. I was just like, and he's getting older in this book, and I have a dog who is 12 and certainly nearing the end of his life, though he is definitely still quite healthy. He still is getting older and is at the upper end of his life expectancy. And so I can totally relate to how Emily feels about Shadow and noticing him slowing down and things like that. And I was just like, I love Shadow. Also, in terms of my 24-hour update, I finished Emily Wilde on Tuesday, but I had not quite met that 24-hour mark yet. I was at around 23 hours. So that night before bed, I actually finished my collection of Chekhov stories, and that took me about an hour. And so I hit that 24-hour mark on Tuesday night, which is longer than I anticipated considering the last time I timed how much I read in a week. I hit the 24-hour mark before I finished the week. And this time it took me 9 days to hit 24 hours, but that's okay. I think that's an indication of how my life has shifted and changed. I was actually reading more than normal in those 9 days as well, because my schedule's slower now than it has been, but still, I was just like, wow, yeah, it's definitely taking me longer, but I did hit the 24-hour mark, and it was really fun. I haven't really tracked how much time I spend reading for a long time. So this was a fun way to do it and a fun way to honor Jenny. Thank you so much to all of you who participated in this readathon, whether you read something that reminded you of Jenny or whether you decided to do the 24-hour readathon aspect, whichever way you decided to do that. It's just so special to be able to gather together and remember her together. So thank you so much. If you posted on Discord or you commented on any of our videos or any of those kinds of things, if you're just remembering Jenny with us, that just means a lot. I'd love to know what you ended up reading for We Love Jenny in the comments, and if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts on those as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.